Prime Minister Mark Carney says that trade and security talks with the U.S. are now back underway.
Last night I had a good conversation with President Trump, and we agreed to recommence our negotiations with a view to the 21st of July deadline that we had agreed in Kananaskis.
Before Canada agreed to halt the digital services tax yesterday, U.S. President Donald Trump brought back some of his sharpest rhetoric. Canada Day celebrations are coming up tomorrow, and just yesterday, Trump renewed his threats to Canadian sovereignty.
The digital
People don't realize Canada is very nasty to deal with. I love Canada. Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state, okay? It really should, because Canada relies entirely on the United States. We don't rely on Canada.
Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture. Welcome back to the program, Minister.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, you want to start talking about these Canada-U.S. negotiations because they are so front of mind for so many Canadians on the digital services tax. Did Canada get anything in exchange for rescinding this tax?
Well, first, people need to understand I'm not part of those group of ministers that are negotiating daily with members of the U.S. administration. That being said, I think Canadians can see and understand how challenging things are with the current administration. Whether you're Canada, whether you're Europe, whether you're Australia, doesn't matter. It's a challenging relationship, and I think what the Prime Minister and the negotiating team are trying to do is to make sure that we come to a good place. And it may be bumpy before we get there, but there's a lot of things that are on the table. And I think looking at one specific element and saying, oh my goodness, what just happened here, and losing sight of the big picture would be, in my view, a mistake.
You say that. I appreciate that point. You may be aware the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said today, Canada caved. Pierre Poilievre is out there saying you guys are elbows down. This was a core pitch to Canadians during the last election campaign, right? Elbows up, fighting for Canada. Do you worry that in the minds of Canadians you've perhaps undermined that pledge?
No, I don't. Again, I think that, I think we will be judged on what the end result will be like. Can we make sure that all of those tariffs, whether it's steel, whether it's aluminum, are gone, that we protect Canadian jobs, that we protect the Canadian economy? And I think that's what Canadians will judge us on, and not, whether this or that particular aspect of it was in or out of the deal.
That suggests that there will be a deal. I mean, the clock is ticking. There's a possibility that there won't be, and I wonder how you think Canadians might judge you if you can't pull it off.
Well, we were able to negotiate a deal the first time that President Trump was in the White House. So
one that he is not respecting right now, we should say.
Yeah, true, but we were confident that, he respected it at the time that he was there the first time around. So we're confident that if we can get to a place where we do renegotiate a deal, he will abide by this deal because he will have just made it. Do we have any guarantees that it's going to happen? No. Are we confident that we can make it happen? Yes.
Donald Trump continues to talk about supply management as a frustration, as a Quebecer, certainly an issue that you're very politically aware of. The U.S. ambassador told us that if that was the only thing holding up a deal, he's pretty sure Mark Carney could find a way to work around the law the Parliament just passed, the one put forward by the Bloc Québécois, protecting the supply management sector. What do you think of that suggestion?
I respectfully disagree with the ambassador's assessment. The Prime Minister has been very clear on a number of times publicly. The first meeting we had with Premier Legault, that was one thing that was discussed back in March. We now have a motion that's been adopted by Parliament. Both the House and the Senate on this issue. This is important, not just for Quebec. It's important for many parts of the country, and we will stand by it.
And so I just want to be crystal clear about what you are saying there. The ambassador is saying if it all came down to this, Canada would solve this. And you're saying if it all came down to this, Canada would stick by the supply management sector?
As I said earlier, I'm not part of the negotiating team. I'm not at the negotiating table. What I'm saying is that the Prime Minister has been very clear that supply management is not on the negotiating table. That's what I'm saying.
You are the minister responsible for Canadian identity, and of course we know that part of this conversation about what's happening with the United States very much sort of touches on that. The ambassador suggested that the Prime Minister had implied this 51st state business was a term of endearment. I suggested that those were perhaps not the words Mark Carney had used, but Ambassador Hoekstra said in essence it's a compliment if Donald Trump wants Canada on his team. He only works with people he likes. If he wants you to be the 51st state, it means he likes you guys. What do you say to that?
With all due respect to the President of the United States, we've had a long-standing relationship with the United States of America, whether it's economical, whether it's social. I mean, lots of people go to the United States, lots of American comes here. We have friends there, we have family, vice versa, but we're different. We have, our culture is different. We have 2 official languages. We value and promote indigenous cultures in this country. We see the world in a very different way. We will be happy to continue doing commerce and exchanges with the American people and with the U.S. government, but we're a sovereign nation, and that's not up for debate. That's not up for grabs.
How do you think Donald Trump's 51st state comments, threats, as some people have said, have impacted Canadian identity, changed Canadian sense of themselves?
Well, I think what we're seeing is, and we're seeing it really from coast to coast to coast, is that perhaps many Canadians are starting to think about Canada in a way they hadn't in a long time. And we tend to take a lot of things for granted when they're not threatened, I suppose, because it's easy, because it's kind of in the back of your mind. And I think now that they're seeing what could be at risk, there is this sense of, oh, let's come together. And let's show who we are and how different we are from the United States or any other country, really. And I think that's what we're seeing. That's the manifestation of what we're seeing. Government certainly didn't create this movement. It was a very spontaneous and grassroots movement that we saw from one side of the country to the other.
You talk about Canadians coming together. I think obviously the exception to that would be the conversation that is playing out now in Alberta. And I'm not trying to suggest by any means that it's a majority of Albertans, but there is a secessionist movement there, and we are closer to the possibility of a referendum. You talked about the government not creating that sense of unity. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has said that the federal government created the secessionist impulse, the separatist impulse, and because of that, it is your problem to fix. What do you say to her?
I think, unfortunately, Premier Smith is acting like a pyroman firefighter. Like, on one side, saying that she's trying to put out the fire, and on the other side, just adding fire to it, adding gas to the fire. Works really well in French. I don't know how well it works in English.
Pyromanie, it's a pyromaniac.
Pyromaniac. Pompier pyroman, we would say in French. The reality is that this federal government and the previous federal government have worked hard to create the best possible conditions for all Canadians. I mean, let me give you an example. She says that we've hurt the Alberta economy. When Prime Minister Trudeau came into power in 2015, Alberta produced about 2.5 million barrels of oil. When Prime Minister Trudeau left, Alberta produced about 4.5 million barrels of oil. So this idea that somehow, because of the Trudeau government, the resource-based economy of Alberta was hurt is simply not factual. Like the numbers just don't add up. And she can continue saying these things, but it's simply not true.
And yet there are a significant number of Albertans who do feel like their ability to use the natural resources in that province have been stifled by Liberal governments. And so my question to you, I take your point that you don't agree, and you point to numbers that suggest that is not the case. But what I want to ask you in closing is back to that question of responsibility. What can be done? Is it to your government? Is it to her government? How do we ensure that this country stays together when there is a point of tension, no question, right now?
Well, I think when we, as Canadians, when we look at what unite us, we will see that there's much more in that category than what divides us. And I think some people, for largely political reason, would like for as many Canadians as possible to put the emphasis on what divides us as opposed to what unites us. Myself, the Prime Minister, and our government will continue to work to ensure that Canadians see how much we have in common and how stronger we are when we're together as opposed to not together.
Okay, we're going to have to leave the conversation there. Thank you for your time today, and happy Canada Day, Minister.
Thank you to you too, Kevin.